What's up? It's Dan Riccio and Randip Janda Canucks this week, or maybe we should start calling it Bo Horvat this week. Randip, the latest developments on the Canucks negotiations with Bo Horvat. There's been a rejected contract offer from the Canucks to their captain in the last couple of weeks, and it's led to Bo Horvat releasing a statement yesterday saying he would like to not have to talk about this until further notice, until there is some form of a resolution. What do you make of what's happened here the last couple of days?
Well, let's take the statement first, though. Good luck not trying to talk about it because once you come out with that statement, that also brings attention with it. So I understand where the statement comes from. I don't know if it's going to work. Now, in regards to the contract being rejected, yes, this is news that I'm sure probably Bo Horvat's camp didn't want out there, and that's why the statement came out. But this is a development for the Canucks, a pretty significant one where they're trying to be a playoff team. They're hanging on to that hope. But when your captain does not sign, when this negotiation has gone public to a degree, it's a rough look for the organization, the player, and it adds drama to that. Guys, if you look at what Bo Horvat's meant to this team this year, 20 goals in 28 games, he's a guy that has been able to, at least on the power play and 5-on-5, been able to score this year. This is a major talking point. And the fact that this contract negotiation, this latest offer was rejected, it is going to be a huge talking point in the city for as long as the saga goes on, Dan. So for me, it's a pretty significant chapter in the story.
Well, Bo Horvat, by saying he doesn't want to be a distraction for his teammates, is sort of become a distraction for his teammates even more. Now, it wasn't him. I don't believe it wasn't his camp that leaked, the rejected contract offer. I think that did, or at least if I'm reading the tea leaves correctly, it came from the Canucks side of things. And you listen to Bo Horvat speak yesterday about the situation. He's clearly unhappy that this is now being played out in the media, because he's always been a guy that wants to keep things clean and proper when in front of the camera, doesn't want to have to answer those types of questions, wants to keep the focus, the attention off of him. That's not going to happen. But I understand the Canucks in this point trying to put the pressure on Horvat, that there has been a rejected contract offer. I believe the Canucks have made a pretty reasonable contract offer to their captain. We talked about it yesterday on Canucks Central, between 49 and 52 million total dollars in this contract offer, 7 or 8 year term. It's just below JT Miller. And all due respect to the captain, Bo Horvat, up until this year, up until these 28 games where he has 20 goals, he hasn't been as good a producer as JT Miller and wouldn't warrant a contract at the same money JT Miller just got, even though he is the centerman that he has been. I think all of those things are true. So this is what's making this a very difficult negotiation, is that the market has changed to a point where Horvat is believing he can get $8+ million on the free agent market.
Well, you mentioned a couple of things that are fact. Yes, JT Miller's production has been much higher than Bo Horvat's when you look at point production. But the fact
top 15 in the league since he's become a Vancouver Canuck, Randy. Top 15 in the league.
He got paid to be a center, though. He got paid $56 million to be a center. How's that experiment for JT Miller going early on this year?
Did he get paid to be a center?
Absolutely.
I mean, if you look at Johnny Gaudreau's contract,
if you listen
Miller's
to Jim
got
Rutherford's
similar
comments,
point production.
if you listen to Jim Rutherford's comments, if you listen to Bruce Boudreau, what have they said? Gives us the best option down the middle amongst the best in the Western Conference, if not the league. I'm not making that up. Those are statements that were made by the management team. So yes, they paid him like a centerman, whether we agree to it or not at this point in time. And through 28 games this season, he has not looked that role. He does not look like a centerman that can be trusted in that regard. Now, Bo Horvat is different in the
what
sense
I will
that,
say about that quickly is the Gaudreau contract and the Huberdeau contract significantly more than where JT Miller is. His point production not too dissimilar from them. It's below theirs,
sure,
but almost $2 million less. No, not actually.
And that's fine. JT Miller's going to get his points. But my point here on Bo Horvat, when we're comparing those numbers, is the 2C position, whether it's short-term or long-term, is something that Bo Horvat will get paid for. If he hits the market, whether it's trade or free agent market, he's going to get paid because the league looks at him as one of the best 2Cs in the game. And that's why when you start looking at the center position and you look at contract years, I'm not saying Bo Horvat is having an Aaron Judge type of year, but it's not that dissimilar where your last year prior to hitting UFA status does matter. So whether that means he's worth $8 million to the Canucks, I agree. That would be an overpay for the Canucks. But here's the thing. You might say it's a fair contract offer to Bo Horvat, but the open market, the free market says otherwise. Could he get $8 million on the open market? Could he get $56 million in total money? I believe he could. That ability to produce, the ability to score goals, and yes, the ability to maybe creep up into that 1C position for some teams is there. So it might be a fair offer from the Canucks, but all it takes is one team, Dan, one team to say, you're our guy. You're going to be 1C, or we're willing to give you that high-end money for a 2C, a really elevated 2C position. And that's why I don't know if the Canucks can actually, I don't know if they'd be smart to get into that conversation, and B, I don't know if they can handle that conversation based on the number of contracts they already have on the books.
So there's a couple things here. I do believe, and if you've heard from the different insiders, both in Vancouver and from the league perspective, I do think the Canucks are going to take another run at signing Bo Horvat. One thing I do wonder is, has the relationship been so hurt that even a $56 million contract offer is going to be enough for Bo Horvat to stay in Vancouver? I mean, you have the in the summer, they offered him the 8-year sort of Nuge contract, $43 million, just over $5 million per. And then there is, of course, this recent one, and now an unhappiness about the fact that this has gone to the public. So there's a lot that's kind of playing in here right now, Randip. But I will say, if you think about Horvat and his recent production, right? People are always saying, oh, JT Miller, they signed him just off the 99-point season. That is factually untrue. He's a top 15 scorer in the league. He's been a point-per-game player since coming to Vancouver. For Bo Horvat, yes, he has increased his goal-scoring ability. Yes, he's done really well in this last season, pretty much. Since Bruce Boudreau came in as coach, he's played 73 games. He scored 44 goals in all competition, all situations. That's an incredible number, an unbelievable number. He's improved in the hardest area that it is to improve in the game. That is goal scoring. But prior to that, if you look at the previous 82 games, 26 goals. And that's what he's been his entire career, Randy. So I don't know if I'm ready to say, yeah, Bo Horvat's this guy that's going to score you 35 plus goals a year because of how he's played over his last essentially season worth of games.
Well, the reality
that's too big of a bridge for me to gap and go from, hey, he's worth $45 million to now he's worth 56 plus. I mean, that's a lot based on one season of production.
And that's understandable. I understand where you're coming from, because here's the reality, in my opinion. The time to sign Bo Horvat was in the summer. The time was when you had a player, yes, maybe he had a little bit of proof, but you prioritized JT Miller first. And credit to JT Miller, 99 points, but his market was at a high. If you're JT Miller, you want that deal done ASAP because you're coming off a 99-point season. But if you wanted to keep Bo Horvat, there might have been some value there. Listen, having that goal scoring season was nice, but now he's doing it at a pace where if he continues at this rate, I don't think he will, but if he does, we're talking about a 59 goal pace. And anytime you're trying to, at the very least, negotiate a contract, that's going to be used against you and say, hey, my guy is amongst top 5 in the league in scoring. How dare you come back with an offer in the, the 49 or the $52 million range? So for me, I think that ship might have sailed, because if you were going to get value on this player, or at least a fair deal, that would have come in the summer, where if you were maybe in that $6.5 to $7 million range at that point per annual average on a long-term deal, you could justify it, and you might actually have an opportunity to get the player's attention and agree. Dan, I don't know if that's possible anymore. And that really comes down to the Canucks made a decision to prioritize JT Miller before Bo Horvat. And that's where, if you look at the situation now, I don't know if you can find fair market value for Bo Horvat, because Bo Horvat and his representation, I imagine, are looking at July and saying, all right, if that's the best they can do, can I get 56 plus or 56 million elsewhere? And if I look at the NHL, a couple of teams that have a lot of cap room, a couple of teams, including one that Bo Horvat, lived 90 minutes away from, and his family still does in Detroit, Where you're looking at saying, all right, the Dylan Larkin thing doesn't happen. Maybe there's a local kid on the other side of the Ontario border that might want to come home. There's probably a couple of teams that are willing to go to that range where I don't think the Canucks can.
It's it would be fascinating to see if Bo Horvat got to free agency. I don't know if he will, because the Canucks, if they don't have a contract worked out with Bo Horvat, they are trading him at the deadline. And I think part of what Jim Rutherford and Patrick Galvin decided when they got here, and they said to everybody, change is going to have to be coming. There's going to have to be some tough decisions made. Maybe we didn't expect it to be Bo Horvat in that moment. And certainly the way speculation went at last year's deadline and through the summer, we all thought it was going to be JT Miller. It doesn't end up being JT Miller. They never got the trade offer that they truly loved when talking to other teams about JT Miller. And they really loved everything JT brought last year and some of the things he brings off of the ice. You know, the sandpaper mentality that JT has is something this organization feels they need more of rather than less of. So there were reasons why they chose to go down that path with JT. And Horvat, who has consistently been a level of production below JT Miller prior to this year in his career, has always had a sterling reputation around the league, is thought of to be this great two-way center, which we've debated quite a bit in this market, whether or not that is actually true. Great at faceoffs, goal-scoring center. Does he play defense as well as his reputation suggests? I'm not sure. Over the last 3 seasons, the Canucks have only outscored their opponents by 1 goal with Horvat on the ice. So there's room for debate there.
Okay, okay. Hold on 1 second, though, because as Elias Pettersson is becoming a two-way force, Bo did the heavy lifting, and yes, he didn't win a lot of those matchups, but going forward, do you still need that type of performance from Bo Horvat? Whoever is driving that second line, in theory, whether it's JT Miller or Bo Horvat moving forward, they're probably going to get the easier matchups. So if you're relying on your second line center to score goals, I have more faith in Bo Horvat doing than JT Miller right now.
My point is, if you're looking at this from how are we going to secure a big asset in return for one of these players that we are going to move on from, Horvat is going to secure you the bigger asset. And even this year, Miller and Horvat have provided similar value for the Vancouver Canucks. You can go look at, I know everybody loves the player cards over at The Athletic. They're essentially worth the same value according to the analytics of it all. So JT Miller and Bo Horvat, even this year, and prior to this year, it was JT who was a little bit ahead of Bo. So that's what I think is part of this calculation by the Vancouver Canucks. It's all going to be incumbent on them to get the big deal, the big asset in return for Bo Horvat, assuming they go down that road. And why do they have to go down that road? Well, you can watch our previous videos. They don't have much else of value to trade right now off of this roster that's clearly not good enough to get to the playoffs, and sure as heck not good enough to compete for a Stanley Cup.
Yeah, if you're making this move, if you're getting rid of an important player and you can't come to terms with them on a long-term deal, you have to make sure, and we've talked about this numerous times, Dan, you got to make sure that you're addressing down the middle, whether it's a young prospect at the center position or right side of defense. This is, the Canucks are not in a situation where they're picking up left shot defensemen anymore. They've got a lot of those, and they've got that whole left side, filled up. You need the right-hand side, and down the middle, if you get rid of Bo Horvat, I understand this might take a couple of years, but you have to make sure you have long-term answers at both of those positions, because those are areas in need that if you're going to be a successful team, you got to have some depth there.
Let us know in the comments what you think has gone on between Bo Horvat and the Vancouver Canucks over the last couple of days and what that resolution might be. Is it a trade, or do they figure out a contract for their captain? Let us know in the comments. Subscribe to the Sportsnet channel, and we'll see you in next week's video.